Another day, another loss, and another instance of the Padres broadcast dunking on the Cardinals. What's going on, everyone, and welcome into this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you here Wednesday morning, August 28th, 2024. Oh boy, the Cardinals lost again last night, 7-5 to the Padres. Miles Mikolas kind of had a pretty typical Miles Mikolas start if you think about it. Oh, well, it was some bleeders that got through the infield that beat in, but put guys on base ahead of those bleeders and ultimately gives up one home run in the game. Just one walk, so you can't really feel too bad about that aspect of the game, but 6 hits, and yeah, I mean, that is what can happen with Miles Mikolas when he pitches to contact. Some days, man, he'll have the ground ball working, and they'll find gloves. Other days, like last night, you'll have some RBI hits against you. You'll have some sac flies against you. Victor Scott made an incredible play on Jackson Merrill. That was kind of a highlight of the game because of the play itself and then the hug after between Victor Scott and Jackson Merrill around second base. Merrill couldn't believe it, and he hung around waiting for Victor Scott, gave him some love there. I thought that was kind of nice. That's kind of a fun moment that you see there, but not a lot else was fun last night about the Cardinals. 7-5 loss to the Padres. We'll talk about where things are, and we'll play that audio for you. I teased it off the top. The Padres broadcast 2 days in a row now, kind of dunking and taking digs at the Cardinals for their bad season as they're noticing the season low and really all-time low attendance totals at Busch Stadium. 27,224 was the announced attendance last night. Again, that's announced. That there are ways that they can make the announced attendance look better than it really should be, right? Well, we sell ballpark passes. Let's count them. There are ways that you're not getting 27,000 in the seats last night, right? I saw some reporting from various writers saying it was 13,000 maybe. I mean, good grief. It's brutal at this point. The Mike Schilt Welcome Home Tour has not been widely viewed, to say the least. So we'll talk about all that, as well as a recent report that has been circulating. It originated from Derek Gould in one of his chats he does for STL Today regarding John Mozeliak's job status. I want to get into that and talk about my thoughts on what a lot of folks may have seen floating around. That's coming up, as well as Down on the Farm, and we'll play that audio from the Padres broadcast from Tuesday night right after I tell you about a brand new partner on the program, Underdog Fantasy. Very excited to have them as a new partner on the program. Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports. It's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry, and you can sign up now with promo code B-Schaeff, that's B-S-C-H-A-E-F-F, to claim your free pick plus a first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Their Pick'em game is a blast and covers a bunch of different sports. Pick whether your favorite players will have a higher or lower stat total in their game or their match this week. For a chance to win big, you can pick between 2 and 8 players to build your Pick'em entry. They have everything on here. NFL season starting soon. There's plenty of baseball on there, WNBA, tennis. I'm actually looking at the PGA Tour, Scotty Scheffler. You want to say if he's going to go higher or lower, 67.5 strokes on Thursday's round at the Tour Championship. You can do that on Underdog Fantasy. I'll have the link in the description to this video. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with my promo code BShafe to claim your free pick and first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. All right, appreciate you indulging me there, guys. Really does help the channel out. I want to play the audio for you from last night's Padres broadcast. Remember on Monday, after that game, we played the audio where they sounded shocked in the top of the first inning of the first game of this series about the lack of fans in the stands. It's not what they're used to seeing at Busch Stadium. Yes, it's been unseasonably hot here for late August. Yesterday was a scorcher. There's no doubt about it, and that contributed. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not blaming the fans for not showing up. If anything, I think it sends the right message to ownership in the front office about the displeasure that fans have about the team. But if you think about it from an out-of-town perspective, they're just not used to coming into St. Louis and seeing that, right? So that is the context sort of behind these comments that are being made on the Padres broadcast now 2 days in a row. I want to play this for you. They got a little more cheeky with this one than they did on Monday.
Attendance tonight, 27,224, 27,224. Another low in stadium history. Again, the heat factor has been a big deal here, perhaps. No roof, of course. The other places that are around 100, most of them have roofs.
Or bad Cardinal baseball.
Well, it could be that, too. 1-2 pitch.
Oh, I mean, come on now. They just got to let that one breathe, didn't they? Well, could be that too. And the pitch. I mean, this is where it's at right now, Cardinals fans. Look, 27 and change announced. I saw the reports, as I mentioned, like 13K butts in seats. That was the reporting. Fans just aren't coming out to the ballpark. And it's been a trend all season long, but now it's gotten to a point where with school having started and the heat is still going and the team is frustrating people, people don't want to spend money on this product. I cannot blame them. I cannot blame fans for where they're at right now. I'll be down at the ballpark on Wednesday night, so I'll get a chance up close and personal to take a look at what the attendance looks like. I think it's a little bit better as far as the weather is scheduled for today. Temperature-wise, I think it's only going to get up to like 92, but it also might be rain in the forecast. So I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening there. That could also cause some issues. Maybe they'll just cancel the game outright. Maybe that would help. But it's something. The attendance woes are something for the Cardinals, and they are not going away anytime soon as the Cardinals lose again last night, falling to 65 and 67. And my interpretation of sort of watching the post-game comments felt like a different Ollie Marmol. And you did have the Sean Armstrong move yesterday. Is that the signal of the white flag wave by the Cardinals organization? They give Sean Armstrong a chance to go to a potential contender, a team that has a chance to make the playoffs? Is that the admission that the Cardinals don't? Or as it was described by Ollie, I saw in the comments and the reports from pregame that they wanted to get a look at Riley O'Brien, but was there a different way they could have done that with Sean Armstrong having given them, 6-7 scoreless outings in a row? They never gave him a chance to pitch and leverage, really. It was always when they were down by a run or so, it seemed like, that he would come into games. It was very strange. And it just seemed like the postgame with Ollie was like if it was the game that it was where the Cardinals had a late lead 5-4 and they let it get away and the bullpen blows it and it's frustrating. And then O'Brien does throw a wild pitch that allows a run to score, but they were down at that point anyway. Paul Goldschmidt gave him the lead with a towering home run. That was good to see. Number 20 of the season for Goldie. But it was just, I don't know, something about the postgame felt like I couldn't even quite put my finger on it just watching it. I wasn't there, but I'll be there tonight. I just could not put my finger on the demeanor. It felt different in some way. And look, the front office making a move that could be kind of viewed as that's the white flag. And we'll see if there are any other moves to come, because that deadline at the end of August for teams to be able to have guys available for postseason, they've got to be on their 40-man roster prior to September 1st. If the Cardinals let any of those other guys go that are kind of in that short-term contract range, that would be a signal even more so of the white flag basically being waved. And Armstrong is kind of, you could see the benefit of the doubt with it and say, well, they weren't using him in leverage anyway. Is that really a white flag? But he was pitching well. So to have a guy like that and say he's pitching well, are you going to try to find a way to get over the hump and get back into this race, maybe have the guys that are pitching well pitch in leverage? Instead, they DFA him. And look, I'm not going to go crazy about, well, that's what they got for Dylan Carlson. They got nothing for Dylan Carlson. I told you they were going to get nothing for Dylan Carlson, and that's actually okay, because of the way they were handling Carlson was never going to be, you were never going to get a productive Dylan Carlson in St. Louis. That ship had long since sailed. We'll see if he can be productive with the Rays. I'm not acting like he's a world beater right now. At first, I would have fun with the home runs and stuff. He's got like a 7-something OPS, which I think is what he's going to be in the big leagues, to be honest with you. But it doesn't functionally matter that that's all they got for Carlson, because the ship had since sailed on actually getting something for Dylan Carlson. I'm still glad they traded him when they did, because I don't think it was a healthy environment for him to be. I'm not going to use the word toxic. It was not a healthy environment for him to be a Cardinal, is what I'll tell you. And I'm not even saying that's anybody's fault. I just think it was the most fair thing to him to get him out of here. And they did. So I had no problem with that move, and I'm not going to rip them now that they DFA'd Sean Armstrong. The part of it that is a question is like, is that the move that comes to give him a chance to play on a playoff contender potentially? Is that a part of that conversation at all? Because if so, that means the Cardinals aren't one, and that feels a certain way. And that harkens back to the comments that Mozeliak made a number of days ago about things are going to look a little bit different in the weeks ahead. We're going to get a look at some guys. Well, Riley O'Brien is one of the guys that they're going to get a look at. And that makes a ton of sense. I totally can understand that point of view. I don't know. As far as Armstrong, was he a better option for the bullpen? Were they going to use him as one than like a Leahy or somebody like that? I don't know. But we'll see if there are more moves to come. That'll be interesting to track for sure, as it feels like the Cardinals are like out of the race. And look, a lot of you are going, no, duh, they've been out of the race. But I've said I'm leaving the door open for them to make their way back in. Yes, it would take the type of winning streak that was organized in 2021 to almost do it. But like, it's possible that they could win a bunch of series and find themselves at 85, 87 wins, and the Braves fall back to you, and maybe that gets you in the picture. But, I mean, right now, they don't look like a team on the verge of threatening to do that. They don't feel like it either with all these comments last night. Like, he kind of waved off one question from, I think, John Denton. But other than that, it was not like there was a bunch of animosity or anger for the way that they lost, which was a tough way. But that's because when you keep having that happen so many times during a season, how can you eventually, like, don't you eventually just kind of, it's over? That was, I'm not saying that the post-game presser was it's over. It was just kind of more of a vibe that he was not as fired up. He was answering the questions cordially for the most part and just kind of getting through it. And it didn't last particularly long, at least what they played on Bally, which, again, I want to reiterate, I was not there last night. So sometimes what comes on the Bally Sports feed does not actually end up being the full post-game with Ollie. That's their editorial decision. They can put on whatever they want, but we have a glimpse to be able to look at it when they post it. So that's the story there. Just felt in the post-game stuff that I saw that they got a very matter-of-fact Ollie. Like, okay, this is the situation. This is what it was. I'm answering these questions. But like the emotion almost felt a little bit disconnected. And look, I get it. It can be a very draining thing to maybe have the emotions on 10 in every post-game presser. And after a game like that, you've maybe had the let's get angry sort of presser at some point in time. But what is it anymore to say? There's not really a lot to say. They have to get more hits. It's the same story. And it gets old after a time. So I don't think I would enjoy answering those questions either. But that's part of the job. It comes with the territory, and that's where it's at right now. Yeah, I'm not really getting on Ollie Marmol for that postgame. I just thought it was striking, just the very subtle maybe, but like a tone shift almost. And does that coincide with a tone shift from the team where they DFA one of their trade deadline acquisitions on that day? I mean, I'm not sure if there's a connection there or not. And I know people, I don't know if Cardinals fans feel this way right now too, where for a while it was like, they've got to fire this guy and all this stuff. Is everybody just kind of resigned to this season being what it is at this point? And you kind of expect there's going to be moves in the offseason that are made. There's going to be a firing. There's going to be changes in the front office. I honest to goodness do not know what's going to happen. I know what will not happen. I know that John Mozeliak will not be fired. I've been trying to tell you that. Hey, Bill DeWitt doesn't want him fired. If anything, Bill DeWitt wants him to stay more than John Mozeliak wants to stay. That's the vibe that I get, right? I've been reiterating that and repeating that on the podcast. I know Ollie Marmol wants to keep his job, but I don't know what the decision's going to be. There might be another sacrificial lamb for what I consider to be, at this point, a lack of effective strategy and planning in John Mozeliak's front office. Does that mean that Ollie Marmol doesn't deserve criticism for 2 losing seasons in a row, potentially? No, I've said every single role has to be evaluated, hitting coach, pitching coach, manager, but I think the front office should be evaluated as well. That's the thing that's not necessarily going to come to the same extent, because we know that the relationship between DeWitt and John Mozeliak is so strong that there's not going to be a firing. There's not going to be a head on a stake, Cardinals fans. If it upsets you, that's okay. That is why you speak with your wallet and you don't go to these games, right? Like that is you as a fan base voicing your displeasure for the way that the organization is handled, and that a relationship between ownership and the person in charge is placed above whether that person's doing an effective job. That can be frustrating. So I am on board with the way the Cardinals fans are choosing to kind of express their displeasure with the situation, 100%. But let's talk about John Mozeliak, because it did come out. It was reported by Derek Gould in one of his chats for STL Today, and then regurgitated by several entities on social media, that John Mozeliak is expected to finish out his contract that runs through 2025 with the Cardinals. All indications are that Mo will finish out his contract. That, to me, is not a surprising thing to see somebody in the know report. The language of finish out his current contract is the key phrase to me, because I think that was always the case. That's exactly what I think we've described as thinking would happen, even if he's not running the Cardinals next year. Again, John Mozeliak finishing out his current contract does not necessarily mean he will be in the same role that he's in. I believe a transition is coming and I'm not saying it will be something that happens in its entirety this offseason, but is Mo going to be the Pobo as we know it come February? The exact same identical role? I don't know that to be true for sure. And that's not flying in the face of the report that says he's going to finish out his contract. No, he's going to finish out his contract. He's going to be employed by the team. Could he be employed by the team in a similar fashion that David Stearns was with Milwaukee when he stepped down from day-to-day president of baseball operationsing with Milwaukee before he went and went off to run the Mets a year or two later? He was still employed by the team. He was still finishing out his contract. He was still working for the club. I think Mozeliak will still be working for the Cardinals. I don't know that Mozeliak's going to be the Pobo past October. I don't know how you sell that to the fan base. I don't know how you tell the fan base it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same as it was. Isn't this great the last 2 years? You're not going to get attendance next year. Even if you make some changes to the roster, which they'll have to do, and they will do, I think a new voice being more prominently featured as early as November 1st, or whenever that changeover happens, would benefit the organization. Mo can still be involved heavily. I still look at Chaim Bloom and say, what's he been doing all year? Really seems like he's been doing a lot behind the scenes, getting his bearings of the organization. Would make a lot of sense to give him a role, even if it's not Pobo off the top at the end of this season. If he wants a role, it would make sense to have that be the transitionary year where Chaim Bloom is getting his fingerprints on everything. If that's what he wants, and that's what the Cardinals want. And I think that would be what DeWitt would want. I think DeWitt wants Mozeliak to stay, right, and not have to make grand change, right? The continuity and the organization having that stability has been very, very important to Bill DeWitt. But Mo is ready to be done. Wouldn't you be if things weren't going well and you're like, man, I built a pretty good legacy here, and now people kind of don't like me as much. That's not fun. From like a human standpoint, I would get that 100%. So I think that would be the way that this could happen, but I also don't know. Maybe Mozeliak wants one more crack. He's under contract. He wants one more shot at trying to really to fix it. Said he wants to create a clear plan where other voices grow in influence and volume over the coming offseason and season. That could signal the exact type of transition that I've been talking about. And it's the one that I think has to happen because after 2 failed seasons, which this one's shaping up to be, you cannot just sell the fan base the exact same thing. Selling them the same thing has gotten you 27,000 announced attendance and 13,000 in the stands in what should be a pennant race. So, yeah, there needs to be changes this offseason. To me, it's more necessary that the change happens with Mozeliak's role than Oliver Marmol's role. I actually do feel that way. They could decide to change both, and nobody would be particularly surprised. But I would also make the case that if all the payroll rumblings that we've been hearing about are based in reality, that they don't want to raise payroll, they didn't want to take on salary at the deadline, they weren't all in committed to trying to make it go this year because they were kind of half in, half out, and they didn't make any moves, they didn't trade away prospects. They didn't want to maybe make the cupboard more barren for the next guy that would maybe like to use those resources to his advantage if it's Chaim Bloom. Like all of that sort of adds up to me thinking that this transition's coming and it's coming soon. And Chaim Bloom is tailor-made for what this ownership group wants. Think about what he did in Tampa, did more with less. He went to Boston. They said, you need to trade Mookie Betts. We're not going to be able to sign him. You got to do that dirty work. Okay. If that's the edict from the ownership group, I'll do it. Tries to make the best of a bad situation, lowered some payroll, still had some success, got them to an LCS, if I'm not mistaken, but didn't win enough, was too close to 500 for 2 of the 3 years or whatever it was, fired. I don't think Bill DeWitt looks at that stint for Chaim Bloom in Boston and goes, oh, we can't have this guy run our team. He didn't win enough. I think Bill DeWitt would be like, if we can go 500 and do it for cheaper than we're doing it now, that would be good. And if we could do that while building up the farm again, and having the development get back on track, we need somebody that can help us get ahead of the curve again because we fell behind it. I mean, it was DeWitt's whole thing when they fired Walt Jocketty. That was earth-shattering when that happened, that they needed to change their philosophy because building through free agency was not going to work as well in the modern age of the game. And so they modernized, and they did. They won through their farm system in the Cardinal way. and they developed Cardinal Devil Magic to have these random dudes come up big for them in the key moments of the season. It ended up being a really good philosophy for a long time. They stagnated with that philosophy, and everybody else has now lapped them. And they need somebody to come in with an updated philosophy that can try to get things built out again from the foundation up. And I think that might end up being Chaim Bloom, and it might end up being sooner rather than later, if he wants the job. I'm going to continue to have that caveat. But I do think that there is a strong chance that he does. I don't know, but I think you've had the year to kind of take your bearings. If you look at this organization and it's something that you want, can they give him the keys to the kingdom? We'll see. Financially, though, when it comes to the Ollie Marmol thing and the Mozeliak thing, like if you're hiring a new Pobo, like that guy's got to get paid. Mo's under contract. He's getting paid, but he's getting paid whatever his role is next year. Do they just kind of give Ollie Marmol the Pedro Grifol year like the White Sox did when I couldn't believe they didn't fire Grifol? Now, in his case, clubhouse was terrible. And we have heard from numerous people that was the case in 2023 with the White Sox. And then they were terrible this year, and they eventually fired him. But that was kind of the vibe of, well, if we're going to be bad anyway, or if we're not going to prioritize winning this year anyway, why pay another manager? Why pay a manager to, just do nothing for us, fire him, and then pay his successor to manage us when we're not even going to win yet? There's a real chance that Ollie Marmol is around next year for that reason. But if you're Ollie Marmol, you don't view it as, I'm Pedro Grifol, I'm fired in August of 2025. It's prove it to the new group that's running the club, whether it's Chaim Bloom, whoever it is, build that relationship and find a way to win some ball games. Do more with less, because that's the kind of thing that can get you kept on as manager. And so I could see that scenario playing out for Ollie Marmol as well. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just trying to give you guys my interpretation of the tea leaves as I read them. But it'll be interesting to see. But that's the news from the report on Mo finishing out his contract. Yeah, that's going to happen. I don't think that's necessarily groundbreaking to people who have kind of understood the thought process of Bill DeWitt's not firing this man. So unless he wants to give him back the money, I think you probably say, yeah, what role am I in? How can I transition? Mo wants the legacy of Cardinal baseball to be sustained. He doesn't want to be known as the guy that ruined Cardinal baseball after doing it so well for so long. But that doesn't mean he has to necessarily be the chief executive officer of the baseball department anymore. We will see what ends up happening this offseason. I just think there needs to be some sort of communication to the fan base of, this is the new plan. This is why you guys can buy back in. We need new voices. We felt we needed a new voice. Chaim Bloom has spent the year kind of surveying the organization. He's got some great ideas to bring to the table. We're going to elevate him within this front office. John Mozeliak is still going to be hands-on because it's up to us to fix this team. That's the way you message it and PR it and whatever you want the titles to be. It's all made up anyway. It's going to be a collaborative front office, where Chaim Bloom's influence is even greater than whatever it is at this point. So that's the way that this could go down. I don't know if Cardinals fans will buy it until the wins start coming in the standings, but they've done this flex seal, let's tape it together and try to staple some stuff shut to make it work for Cardinal baseball. They've done this the last couple of years, and those rosters haven't panned out. So the notion of maybe we should take a minor reset and not necessarily admit that we're going to lose more games than we did this past year. Like, they could lose 83 games this year and win 83 next year by spending less on payroll because they prioritize young players, give guys an opportunity. They can develop them better if they bring in some better, some new minds, whatever the case would be on the development side. I do think that needs a refresh. There's guys like Gary LaRocque who have done a great job for all these years, but does there need to be a revamp to that department? 100%, I think there does. You can't argue otherwise with how the development of these young players, they get to the big leagues and they don't perform. Like, even casual Cardinals fans are going, that's weird. When are they going to have these guys step in that are supposed to be the stars, right? So I do think you need to have those sorts of conversations throughout the organization. And if you bring in somebody new from the outside, it's Chaim Bloom. He knows the bearings. He has an idea probably in his head of what he would want to change, what he would want to keep. And you give him free reign. And the reason that I think that the Wits could do that and would maybe be willing to do that is because it's such a good fit for, hey, if we've got payroll constraints, this guy is known as a guy who's been able to do more with less in the places that he's been. So I think it's a picture-perfect fit. I don't know if he's going to want the gig, if he's going to want it as soon as this offseason, what Mozeliak's exact role is going to be. But yeah, he'll finish out the contract. Beyond that, I still think we have questions about exactly what that means. But that's what's going on there. And yeah, it's big picture stuff. I could have dove into the actual content of that game if you guys really wanted, but I feel like, not even the manager was really excited to talk about that game after the fact, because it was another one that in a season full of these types of games, Cardinals lose 7-5 after having the lead. Sometimes they don't have the lead. Sometimes they just lose it early, right? But they had the lead and it goes away and you're left going, man, another almost sort of vibe to it. That's got to be frustrating. That's got to be frustrating, and it's frustrating for Cardinals fans too. There's no doubt about that. All right, let me know your thoughts on some of that big picture stuff. By the way, make sure you guys are subscribed to this channel and signing up for the Discord. I'll put that link in the description, along with the link to Underdog Fantasy with promo code B-Schaeff, if you guys want to sign up for that. But before we get out of here, we should go down on the farm. It's time to go down on the farm. Brought to you by Hastings Layers Premium Eggs.
You'll be happier than a jackass eating thistle.
Huh? So the Cardinals have been awaiting the return of Steven Matz, and he pitched last night for AAA Memphis. 3 innings, allowed 4 runs, 2 of them earned, 5 hits, didn't walk anybody, struck out 3, but not a glowing outing for Steven Matz in Memphis. I don't see how you can put him into the rotation, but if it's more about 2025 than it is 2024, then maybe you can't. Maybe you can say, yeah, we'll put him back in because we need to know a little bit more about if he's going to be able to rebound and bounce back and be somebody that we should be counting on for next year. Maybe they want to get an additional look at what the current version of Steven Matz is like. Maybe that's part of the appeal there. I don't know. They have been sort of limiting his pitch count to where he can stay flexible, be a starter, be a reliever, be a long man. It'll be interesting to see what exactly they end up wanting to do with him, but the time should be coming soon, as I don't know that he needs any more rehab starts. Lance Lynn's going to have one here coming up soon, so that'd be something to keep an eye on. I was thinking that he wasn't even going to take one because I figured he would just say he didn't want to, and the Cardinals would say that's fine. But I guess they are going to have him do a rehab, so that's interesting. Jordan Walker was 2 for 4 yesterday, had himself a couple of doubles, in fact, so that's good to see from J-Walk. And as far as anybody else goes, Gorman, well, he's 0 for 3 with a walk. He's got a 521 OPS down there in Memphis. That is, yeah, he's lost. He's lost. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. There's no spite in it. Like, the people would say, oh, I'm a Gorman hater because I've described his season as a bad one. Dude, he's got a 130 batting average in Memphis, hitting 521. He's lost right now. Hopefully he can find it. To me, that's a confidence thing. How many times have we had that story in recent Cardinals history? Guys losing confidence, guys losing ability. Look, there were always going to be holes in Gorman's swing. It's why I said I would not trade Donovan. I would trade Gorman if I ever had to make that pick. But I don't know. It is what it is at this point. Michael Ciani began a rehab assignment for Double-A Springfield. That's also notable here from down on the farm. 0 for 3 in his start, but he did play 5 innings, I believe, of center field. I think was the edict coming into that game. So maybe you get Michael Ciani back soon. I do not think, I'm going to get out in front of this because this will be a popular topic in the offseason. I don't think you have to trade one of Victor Scott or Michael Ciani, but they are kind of redundant players in that they're both left-handed hitting center fielders who project to not necessarily be above average offensively. But I like having both players in the organization. I don't think you have to trade one. If you happen to trade one because you get fair value for that player and get something you don't already have, that's fine. But I think having the depth is something that can be valuable because then you're not reaching and saying, oh, we have literally no outfielders to call up in August when injuries happen. So that's the note I wanted to make there about Ciani. Good to see him kind of getting back at it. And there's really not a lot else to say from down on the farm as far as it goes right now. A lot of the prospects and guys, like Ivan Herrera is now up with the big club after the injury to Wilson Contreras. So that's kind of the way that that's playing out. I did see somebody recently tell me that they haven't seen J.J. Weatherholt recently in the box scores for Palm Beach. And so I wanted to kind of look into that. I'm not sure what happened late last week, but he was back in there yesterday. Has not been performing as well recently, but was in the lineup yesterday for anybody who may have been wondering about that. But that is going to do it for this edition of B-Schaeff Daily. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.